The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robin Emiliani, and I'd like to thank you for joining us today for MCA Connect's webinar, Top Tips for Work From Home Success. We're really happy that each of you could make it, and I encourage you, if you have questions throughout today's presentation, please just type them into the question panel on your screen, and we'll be happy to answer any questions at the end. So now I'd like to introduce you to our presenter today, Scott Hanson. Scott is the Managing Director of Engagement Management at MCA Connect, and he's been at MCA for a little over a year now. And Scott is very qualified to give this presentation today because he's been working from home for the last 21 years. So Scott also has 3 very tall teenage boys, ages 19, 17, and 16. And Scott, with that, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thanks, Robin. Welcome, everybody, and thanks for joining us today. This new environment that we're all working in today has really impacted the way we work. And for those of us who have traditionally worked in this space, it's impacting us as well because now we have kids home full time. Robin mentioned I have 3 teenage boys, one of which is in college and now suddenly is home for 5 months. And you have work from home or schooling at home that we have to deal with. So it's really impacting all of us. And just the fact that we can't even go out and meet with our customers. So although I work from home all the time and I'm used to that, I was also on the road a lot. So I got a lot of interactions with our customers. And obviously that hasn't been the case over the last several weeks. So we have to adapt. And for some of you working from home full time, this may be brand new to you. So really today what we want to do was just address some key tips for how to be more productive from home. Really, I hope that today you find at least one point that you can take away that'll help you be a little bit more productive. So let's go ahead and get going. As far as working from home, there are a lot of challenges and benefits to working from home. One of the biggest challenges that we really face is less structure. You don't have the structure, you don't have the feeling of accountability that you do when you're in an office. When you work in an office, you're used to getting up at the same time, you have your morning routine, you get to the office at the same time, you leave your office, and when you leave work, you go home. You might check emails, etc. on your email, but you're really separated from your work life. When you're in the office, you obviously have coworkers, you have your boss, all of them make you feel more accountable to completing your work. Well, now all of that is really gone. When you work from home, you have to maintain your own structure and you have to create new habits to make sure that you stay accountable, you stay organized, and that you develop good habits in working. So really requires a lot more focus and clear objectives of what you're going to do and accomplish in a given day. Because you work from home, one of the other really important things to keep in mind is it's very easy for you to find yourself working all of the time, meaning that you walk by your computer, you go, I'm just going to stop in and check my email real quick, or I'm going to get a jump on tomorrow. You want to avoid that. You really need to separate that work from your personal time. Doesn't mean you can't check your email on your phone or whatnot, but just like you're in the office, you want to make sure you separate that. You also, as I'm sure all of you have learned to this point, if you haven't really worked from home, there's a lot more distractions. Just the distractions of things around the house. You've got kids, as I mentioned earlier. You've got delivery workers. You've got dogs. I'm sure you've all been on conference calls where somebody's dog is going off. Delivery people showing up at the door. Whatever it takes, there's always distractions that happen. So you want to obviously work to minimize that as much as possible. Many of you also may not have the proper work environment at home. If you're not used to working from home, you may not have the equipment that you do in the office. You may not have access to some of the things that you need to really be effective working from home. And then the separation between work and being home with your family, that gets a little bit more difficult. And you have to really increase your communication with your family and talk to them about when you're working and when you're not. And then, of course, we're all facing the cabin fever issue today. Even those of us that work from home all the time, now that we aren't able to actually leave and interact with friends and family, we're not visiting our customers, we're all starting to get a little bit of cabin fever. But a lot of benefits to working from home. I actually very much enjoy working from home. I do like my opportunity to get on the road and meet with folks face to face, so I get a little of both, which is nice. But when you work from home, obviously you have less travel time, so you have more time that you can focus on your work activities. There tends to be more flexibility in your schedule, so that, for instance, I work across time zones. In my prior job, I worked internationally. I start very early because I'm a morning person, so I usually start around 6:30 in the morning, and that gives me flexibility. If I'm going to have lunch with somebody or if I have meetings or whatnot, I can actually flex my schedule quite a bit, more so than if I have to worry about my commute to the office and dealing with traffic and all the other things that you have to do. A lot of times when you're working, you're basing it on how long is it going to take me to get to work, when is my first meeting in the office, those types of things. So you do have a lot more flexibility, which is really, really nice. The flexibility and the less time commuting obviously gives you more time for being with your family, and you also aren't having people do pop-ins. That's both good and bad, right? People pop into your office, you get the social interaction, which that's the benefit of being in the office, but at the same point, you get distracted, you get conversations in the hallway, and you just have more distractions of people taking away your time when you're in the office. Obviously, you're saving money on eating out and fuel, and typically not as formal. Now, the little picture down there at the bottom is, stay away from the stereotypical, yeah, I roll out of bed and I start working, don't have to worry about my hair, don't have to worry about my clothes. If you're working at home, you should really treat it as if you're going to the office. It may be a little bit less formal, kind of like a casual Friday, but you want to be presentable. Always join meetings as if you're going to be on video. So let's talk about what we can do to address some of these challenges and really be productive. So first of all, when you're at home, you really need a dedicated working space, an area that is just for work. Preferably, this would be a separate office. That's obviously the optimal, a place where you can completely set up your office, have all of the things that you need, and close it off from everything else that may be distracting, whether that be your kids, your dogs, anything else that may take you away from your work. The other thing that's an advantage is it really separates your home from your work. Now, a lot of people might not have that ability to have a dedicated office, and you have to find a place that you can actually work, especially since this has been thrust upon a lot of you. So what you want to do is find some nook, some area, even if you just need to get a folding table and set it up somewhere where that is your office space, and dedicate that to really your office space so that you can have better focus when you're working, but also a physical space that you're actually leaving when you leave the office. In your space, be aware of your background noise. So it's getting nice, everybody's starting to open their windows. Be aware if you're on all of these calls, the background noise from cars driving by or people working on the yard around the neighborhood, all of those things that may come into play. You're going to hear me say on and on, use your video because it makes it more personal. Really, if you're going to use your video, make sure you look around, make sure what's in the background. Can't tell you how many times people throw on their video and there might be pictures or something in there that may make people question things or ask or may be inappropriate. So make sure you know what's in view of your camera. Proper lighting. I actually really like to have natural light in addition to artificial light because it makes it feel less like a cave. So make sure that you're comfortable. Get a comfortable chair. I use an air chair personally because that's what I like with lumbar support. But decorate your office, get comfortable, just like you would in your regular office. And one thing that I would strongly recommend that each of you have is some form of whiteboard or other mechanism really for tracking all of your objectives and priorities for the day. It's something that you want to be able to quickly reference, see, keep those objectives and things in front of you. No matter how much you try when you're working at home, there are always going to be distractions. And for those of you that have little kids, it's even more challenging, right? Everybody's seen the video where the guy was doing the interview from the UK and the kids come into the room and he's doing his best to try and keep going on this very serious topic, but it happens. First rule is this stuff is going to happen. Don't get upset. Don't get embarrassed. Just deal with it. Just mute your phone, address the issue, and return to the topic at hand. A lot of people get really frustrated or with the interruptions, but we're all getting used to this environment, especially in today's day and age. So just mute your phone, address the issue, and then come back as quickly as possible. Other things you might want to have in the office is noise canceling headphones or a headset. This is something I prefer the ones that go completely over your ear. That way you totally get rid of all of the outside distractions. You can hear clearly. It should have a good microphone so that as you're speaking, I'm not actually using one today on this call. I typically do, but I see it's sometimes distracting when you're presenting. So hopefully my audio is okay, but I typically use the headphones. Also, obviously you can listen to music. And when I started out, I was a developer. So really I sat in an office, I put on headphones and I blasted music and wrote code all day. And it's just a good way to keep yourself very focused on the task at hand. Dual monitors. If you're going to be working at home for any length of time, I highly recommend that you have dual monitors. This way that you can have your email or your Teams or whatever collaboration tool that you're using on one screen. Then you can have the work that you're focusing on another. That picture on the right is actually one of our delivery directors' home office. He feels the need to have actually 4 monitors. I can kind of understand 3. I'm not exactly sure what the 4th one is for. I'm going to have to find out. But it's very helpful in kind of setting it up so that you have more real estate in which to do things. You're not having to flip back and forth between what you're working on. Obviously, printers and scanners. Most people have all of that already. Everybody pretty much has Wi-Fi these days. However, I do highly recommend a dual band router, especially if you have kids. What that allows you to do is split your bandwidth so that you can actually have a network that's just for your work, and that bandwidth is focused on that network, and you can put your kids on another. You also have the ability with your routers to prioritize devices, so that makes sure that your work has access to the bandwidth first, as well as if you have kids like I do who are on Xbox on a regular basis or on their phones constantly, you can also go on into your router a lot of times and set up a schedule so that you can actually shut off their network. So for me, my kids, during a school day, even when they're schooling from home, the network shuts down on their devices at a certain time of night, so that I ensure that they're not out there doing Xbox until 2 in the morning when they're supposed to be sleeping. So just a few things that you want to consider there. Obviously, we all have all the core applications. You may want to look into, if you're somebody in a position of authority that has to sign documents, if you guys have electronic signature software. That's pretty common these days, but obviously as we're working from home, it's more and more important that you have access to that on a regular basis. And then your collaboration tools, like what we're using today. If you're using GoToMeeting like this, or Teams or WebEx, whatever your solution that you use primarily, make sure you go out and really look at tips and tricks. There's tons of tips and tricks out there on the internet, on YouTube. Make sure you really understand how those tools work. Take advantage of some of the features like blurring the background, or how you share or how you take over, so that you don't spend a lot of time trying to figure those things out, and how do you make it the most interactive. Also, communication tools. Obviously, we're all using like Teams or Slack or Yammer, one of those to communicate. Those are very, very effective for keeping yourself connected with your coworkers. You really need to be careful with those, though. You're going to hear me talk about distractions a lot. When you're working from home, there's all kinds of different distractions. And if you have that up, it's very easy for you to get distracted when you're on calls and not pay attention. So make sure that that you set your statuses on that appropriately, and that you're being careful to not be distracted during meetings. So keep that status updated. And then, of course, I think everybody probably uses some form of Google Docs or OneNote, some type of application that allows you to collaborate on documents, etc., without having to email back and forth. So what do you do when your life isn't as structured, and you have to actually go through your day with your own structure that's quite different from actually working in an office? Your standard routine that you're used to has gone away, which may make you feel like you have more freedom, but can also lead to procrastination, can lead to laziness, can make you unproductive if you don't actually have a schedule. So you need to establish a new structure, and starting with your morning routine. Set your routine just like you're going to go to the office. Pretend like you're not working from home. Get up at the same time. Set your alarm. Get yourself ready. Do whatever your normal routine is at home with your kids and your family, and then go into your office and start your day like any other day. quitting time is quitting time. Just like if you're going to the office and you had to get on the road in order to avoid traffic, make sure that you're doing the same thing at home, that you're leaving on time and spending the quality time with your family. Like I said, you can always check your emails on your phone just like you would on any other day, but when you're home, again, it's very easy for you to get into the mode of stopping in, checking your email, and suddenly you can lose 30 minutes just sitting there checking your emails and responding to people. So make sure you leave on time. Tracking your daily objectives, more important. A lot of these things are very common even when you work in an office, but really important when you're working from home is to track and create your daily objectives, what you're trying to accomplish. That's really where the whiteboard or task manager that can be very visible comes into play. You want to make sure that you have all of your tasks outlined. I recommend doing it in the order in which you're going to complete them and starting with the hardest one first so that you're fresh. But limit what you can actually accomplish in a day. Nothing's worse than having a task list and getting to 3/4 of it and not getting to the other items. So make sure it's actionable. And that'll keep you motivated as you check things off as you move throughout your day. Time blocking. Very important that we use our calendars. A lot of people are used to using their calendars. It is really, really important. I live and die by my calendar, that you work and time block your schedule accordingly. So you'll want to block 2 to 3 hours at a time to work on your various tasks. Keep your time flexible, so you have sometimes that can be moved. So if you're working on your internal projects or leaving time available that people can schedule meetings with you, make sure you leave that flexibility in your calendar. Many of us have a tendency to book our meetings back to back, which means we're constantly late for meetings because things go over or we haven't quite scheduled enough time. So you need to make sure that you're scheduling your meetings for 25 to 50 minutes so that you have that time to transition, use the restroom, all the other things you do normally. Breaks. Put your breaks on your calendar as well. Lunch times, if you've got time like you need to go through, I spend a little time every day with my kids going through what their schedule is for the day and what homework assignments that they have. Put that on there. It can be private meetings so that you just have that time set aside that you can accomplish the things that you need to accomplish. I also highly recommend that you color code your calendar so that if you have meetings that are fixed, scheduled with your boss or whatever, that those meetings have one certain color and you have another color for things that can be more flexible, and then maybe even another color for your personal activities. So as people ping you and say, hey, do you have time to catch up or whatever, you can quickly glance your calendar and know what you can move around so that you can have some flexibility and make that happen. And then be mobile. You'll hear that a lot when you watch any of these types of videos, is you need to get up, you need to exercise. If you're on calls, that you can get up and walk around your office. If you have more general meetings, such as maybe you're having a corporate update meeting, take that out on your porch, something to break up your day a little bit and get yourself revitalized. It's a good way to keep yourself from not getting too sequestered into your own office. Communication. Obviously, communication is going to be key for both working from home with your coworkers, where you're not seeing them physically day in and day out, but also with your family. You really need to let your family know what your work is going to be like when you're working from home, and that when you are home, you are actually working, so that your spouse or significant other or your kids don't come in and just assume because you're home you're not working. So they need to know what your schedule is as well. You need to, if you have young kids especially, you need to let them know when you're going to be off of work so that you can spend time with them just like you normally would. Hopefully that'll cut down on the distractions and the knocking on the door, which inevitably happens with kids. But also with your coworkers. There is a need to over communicate what you're working on and what your goals and objectives and timelines are. So you don't want to create an environment that you are making it look like you're productive. You want to be productive and just make sure that you're communicating effectively what you're working on and what your timelines are. So having regular and consistent team meetings and interactions with your coworkers, very, very important. You can really get off track if you don't have that, and it's easy to lose sight of what's going on, but also keep track of your social interaction, right? I mean, this is the new norm. And so our ability to interact with our coworkers now becomes this communication through all of these collaboration tools. So have that consistent time to sit down with your team members, to sit down with your boss, let them know what you're working on, and quite frankly, just to catch up and keep some kind of social aspect going. We're also using more tools than ever. I've talked about some of the IAM, obviously use text, use video chat to stay connected, any way that you can kind of touch base with people throughout the day. But there's also the need, as you are starting to work from home, others are as well. And you really need to assume that the best intentions from others, because we distance ourselves, and a lot of times you can misread intent when you're in this form of communication as opposed to in the room. So give people the benefit of the doubt that they are have the best intentions in mind, that they are working diligently on their objectives. In meetings, be involved. It's very easy to get on these calls where you've got your team when you're not in an office situation and sit back and listen. Really, you want to get in there, be a listener, be a participant, get involved in the conversation. It makes it more social. It makes people know that you're involved, listening, paying attention. Because obviously, if you are just sitting back, you don't have your video being shared, you could be off doing other things. Also, what you probably have learned by now, just being sequestered, is it can be lonely working from home. And as humans, we want connections with other people. So again, make it social. Use your video. I can't really stress that enough. If you aren't used to using your video and you have a regular meeting, suggest that you do one meeting without the video. Then the next time you have that same meeting, ask everybody to turn their video on. Notice the difference in your interactions. Notice the difference in how you feel following that meeting, because you're now connecting. You're having that visual interaction with somebody that you don't get if you're just listening on the phone. It also keeps you present in the meeting. So make sure you stay present, you stay focused and involved in the meeting. So effective meetings. I've got this it's actually a link here on the right, a conference call in reality. Some of you may have seen it. There's also webinars in reality. And it's quite funny because it talks about like being late to meetings. And every conference call you've ever really been on, when somebody joins late and they apologize for joining late, or they have issues getting on the technology, or I'm sorry, I was muted. All the things that you hear in almost every call that you do. So it's quite funny, but all of that is reality and detracts from the purpose of the meeting. So just some things to think about. This effective meetings really could be a complete topic in and of itself, and this is one of the topics that we have for the future if people are interested about how really to organize effective meetings and pull them off. But we just want to touch on a couple of things real quick, which is get your agendas out in advance. Make sure that you've shared what the objectives of the call are. Make sure that you're publishing the agendas into the calendar invites that are out there. I've already mentioned be on time, whether you're a participant or it's your meeting, and start the meeting on time. I know we don't want to start meetings when we don't have key players in the room. That's where IM, text, and everything else comes in handy to find out if they're going to be able to join quickly. But you really want to try and get those meetings on time, because it just pushes everything back. Like I said, plan your meetings for 20 to 25 minutes, so to 50 to 55 minutes, if it's an hour long, so you've got time for overages. And again, make it a video call if you at all can. And I really encourage you all to try this week if you haven't been using video, is get out there. It creates accountability. It forces you to stay present. Make sure that you're not being distracted, because I guarantee you every person on this call who's been on conference calls or webinars is doing email, is responding to IM messages, is doing other things detracting you from the purpose of the meetings. And when you're working from home and this is your mainstay, you really need to stay focused on the conversation at hand. Consistency is really key in how you're running your meetings. Make sure that you are recapping all of the outcomes and actions at the end of the meeting, that you're verbally discussing what those actions are. And then, of course, document and publish your notes. No different than you would in the office, but obviously more and more important as you're working from home. So we really just set this up today for a quick tips and things to think about. One last thing that I'll give you as a tip is make sure that you're eating right and that you're getting that exercise. We're all probably suffering because not only are we working from home, but our whole lives are staying inside of the home at this point and may not be getting out as much as we need to. So probably eating a little bit more than we should, at least I know I am. So make sure you're getting out there and getting your exercise. But we did want to throw out there, if there are things that people would like to do a deep dive on, whether that be really looking at an effective meeting and how we organize that, maybe it's specific to some of the Microsoft projects that we have going on, whether that's F&O or CE. What are things that we can do from home that keeps us productive and on track within our projects, that is generic and applies to everyone, like creating user stories, and how do we do that effectively. MCA as an organization has had to change some of the things that we do to do it remotely, like we've run our first user acceptance testing remotely. We've been running business transformation sessions for new clients remotely. So we have a lot of capability within our organization to talk about how we can have projects stay on track and be productive. And then, of course, there's always effective use of any of the tools that we've been talking about, whether it's collaboration tools or other tools that are available for you that you can take advantage of. So if you have ideas that you would like to hear more about or us to do a deep dive on, we can set up a follow-on meeting for some of those areas. So with that, that's really all of the prepared content that I had. Robin, if you have any questions, please let us know. Robin, has there been any questions come through on chat?
Nope, no questions through the chat. But if you all send questions now, we'd be happy to answer those. So, and Scott, thank you so much for the presentation today. Hopefully everybody got a couple good nuggets out of this, and we want to thank you all for attending today. We did record today's webinar, so we will send out a link when that is ready, so feel free to share that out with your teammates. So we hope everyone has a great week, and thank you again for your time, and please stay safe.
Thank you.